Oh no. Hello everybody. Live. Yeah. Hi everybody. I'm back again and I'm here with another chapter of one of my dad's manuscripts. Now, let's be real here. It's chapter 30. So, honestly, if you haven't watched all the other ones, I'm not going to tell you how to live your life, but you might want to go back and watch the previous ones. Also, just to let everybody know that I have basically these 3 chapters left, and then I'm done this manuscript. What I'm probably gonna do after that is I'm gonna be one more chapter tomorrow night, and then, Monday is a holiday here in Canada, so I will be off until Tuesday, and then I'll do the final one along with some extras. And then I'm gonna take a little bit of a break. I originally was thinking I'd take a break until January, except for I don't know. I'm gonna see how I'm feeling, um, but I'm tentatively gonna take a break until January is what I wanted to do. But if I get the niggling, because I already know what the next book is I'm gonna be reading, and I'm gonna be editing it, and I wanna get a jump start on publishing because I'm expecting a bit of a I wanna have a kind of a turnaround for my production schedule for 2024. Yes, there's a schedule. I have a lot of manuscripts to go through, and I have some that still have to be, like, heavily edited, like, as in structurally edited. So, this is a bit of it looks like a bit of a, conveyor belt and that sort of thing. That's because it is. Um, yeah, it's with as many manuscripts as I have lying around, and that's just ones lying around. That doesn't include any of the spin-offs I'm working on or anything like that. Which, yes, there are spin-offs that I'm working on. um, for some of them, not for every single one, because that's just not possible and not feasible for some of them. This, however, is a different matter. This one is a bit of a flagship. Um, this particular edition is similar to similar to the one from 1977 that I keep on referring to. I know everyone's sick to death about it now, but it's a very different one. After I'm done reading this, I highly recommend if you're even remotely interested in it, I recommend going and picking up that book because I feel like it's got more fantasy elements to it. It's more of a favorite of mine. This one's not bad. It's just different. More on that on Tuesday. Right now, you're here for me to read a story. You're not here to me talk about, well, maybe you are here for me to talk about books, but I am here to read a story. So here I go. Chapter 30. The little people raided us from their mountain refuge, and from their upland hiding places they sent their hands. Therefore we resolved to end for all times their menace. And we met with the others, the green ones, without cities, larger and stronger than the strongest man. Fewer their numbers, and our warriors slew several as being of no account. Now, therefore, they make common cause with the little ones in the highlands against us. On both sides are magical and sorcerous weapons being used. It is fear that this war will not be won easily. From Writings of Thurhenzim Zimder. More on that later. They waited then for the rest of the Asbalaunian magicians to come up, and as they waited, Rourke questioned the Old One. Is this similar to the barrier that blocked the Icarian Pass, Old One? Similar, but different. That in the past was it a naturally strong form of one such as the Asbalaunian magicians commonly use. This, though, is distinctively Hygerian and different from all we know. Some of the wisest say that such barriers as we use disturb the borders of space and time, so that whoever win through would win through to the central crystal must fight against things of strange and dreadful nature. It is also said that one sort of barrier was used by Arkaz Bazdwazar as a test for chieftainship. The man who could win through to the center was worthy of being followed. And what of these Arkaz-Wazar? Who were they? In the Arcurian hills, and somewhat in the lowlands as well, they tell tales of the bowmen of the Iron Coats. They were the Arkaz-Wazar. They came to these lands from far away, and were mostly destroyed in their war with the dwarves of the mountains, after the dwarves allied with the other people, who are also known as trolls. Trolls? In a war? They were not always as we know them. Indeed, they are not truly trolls. But I go ahead of the story. Our ancestors fled from the old island on the night of fire, and many of them settled over across the mountains, in the midst of the people who already lived there, the Dracos, who were skilled hunters and wandered throughout the land, never staying long in one place. But the hunters soon formed a distrust and hatred for the farmers, for they feared for the survival of the game on which the hunters depended. A war began, not a war of battles and armies, but a war of raids and skirmishes, with the occasional uneasy truces. Sometime in the midst of this, the war began between the dwarves and the bowmen in the Iron Coats. The dwarves, who had possessed all this plain on which we stand, were driven into the mountains, but they continued to raid into the lowlands, causing the bowmen to form the resolve to exterminate them. Then the bowmen ran afoul of the other people, who dwelt on the lower slopes, without towns or cities. In their arrogance, the bowmen treated them as animals, killing them for no cause. In this manner, they drove the two races into a common cause, and thus allied, the two peoples proved bitter enemies to the bowmen. A group of the bowmen went by ship round the end of the mountains in an attempt to attack from the rear, but again their arrogance betrayed them, for they plundered and slew both farmers and hunters for their supplies. It was then that Iccar, of whom you will have heard much, gathered a force of both hunters and farmers and defeated the host of bowmen. But by some foreknowledge, he knew what would be the end of the conflict over the mountains. So he led all who would follow him into the hills. The Dracos, those of the hunters who remained, withdrew to the swamp. The Dracos, those of the hunters who remained, withdrew to the swamp, and the only ones left on the plain were certain of the more stubborn farmers who inherited the land after all was done. In the last stages of the war, both dwarves and bowmen set loose wizardries and sorcerous weapons better not thought of. At last, the mountain allies blasted all this plain with a magic fire known as the Little Sun. Town, city, village, all were destroyed, and the Arkaz-Wazar wiped out. The plain was blackened. Then the dwarves came from the mountains to look on their homeland. Seeing the black desolation and blasted ruins, they turned back in grief to the mountains, from whence they have not come again. The other people, from greatest to least, went mad and have been as beasts ever since. Some say it was a punishment of the high powers for using such dread weapons. Others say that their peace loving souls were overborne by the great evil they had wrought. By now, the rest of the Asbalanian magicians had come, singly and in small groups, and they began to discuss just how and in what manner they were going to work. At last, having reached the agreement, they set to their tasks. But, interesting story about the trolls. I do like that. That's one of my favorite parts of the story. Not that I wish harm on trolls. However, I really, really like that backstory. It was like that's the key part of this whole entire chapter. Yeah, and also some history of the Archbald Wazars, which I have a lot of research to do with like a lot of paper, like so many papers and story bits and stuff like that to kind of go back in and see. But I think there are quite a few ties to the Archbald Wazard, and yeah, very interesting though. This is a shorter piece. The next few of them are going to be very short, so I might be a little more chatty. So if I'm too chatty, I apologize in advance, but not really because this is a live stream and therefore I'm alive. Anyway, thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate you catching up on the past broadcasts and watching me. Um, I will talk to you all again tomorrow. Thanks again. Have a good night.